Welcome to This Week in Health IT Influence, where we discuss the influence of technology on health with the people who are making it happen. My name is Bill Russell, recovering healthcare CIO and creator of This Week in Health IT, a set of podcasts and videos dedicated to developing the next generation of health leaders. This podcast is sponsored by Health Lyrics. Professional athletes have coaches for every aspect of their life to improve performance, yet many CIOs and health executives choose to go it alone. Technology has taken center stage for healthcare. Get a coach in your corner. Visit healthlyrics.com to schedule your free consultation. Two new services on the website I want you to take a look at. This Week Health Insights for individuals looking to propel your health IT career forward. 2 emails a week designed to give you insights that are going to set you apart. This Week Health Staff Meeting is the other service. It's for teams, for managers looking to introduce your team to new thinking from industry leaders to get the conversation started on the right foot. Today we're joined by Dr. David Bensema, retired-ish physician CIO, who is in the airport leaving from Madison as we speak, following the Epic UGM 2019 conference. And we're going to join that show already in progress. That'll be good. So the obvious first question, you are at Epic UGM 2019. The obvious first question is, why does a retired physician CIO go to UGM?
I was fortunate to be invited by an old friend of mine, Megan Du, who was our director for our Epic implementation, to apply for the Emeritus program. And I applied and was accepted into the Emeritus program. It doesn't mean a whole lot other than I'm available through Epic should a system have issues and need somebody with my experience to help them sort it out or to temporarily cover something. And I thought I'd give it a shot, see what it looked like.
Wow, that sounds like a fantastic program. Did you take advantage of some of the people in the Emeritus program when you were doing your implementation?
It didn't exist when we were doing our implementation. It's about 2 years old and still evolving. One of the things we were talking about this time is trying to get awareness developed not only with the BFFs, which are, your first call to Epic, but with some of the folks who are on the front end of the relationships, so they help organizations actually know that this exists, so maybe we can prevent fires instead of trying to put out fires. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So let's jump right into UGM. So you've gone to a few of these, so you're a veteran, and obviously you did an Epic implementation, so you're a fan of Epic because your implementation went really well. Give us an idea. So 40th anniversary for Epic. Judy took us on a little path, a walk down memory lane, if you will. Give us an idea of, that talk and some of the key themes that were going on at the conference. Yeah, so Judy started at the very beginning. The theme of this whole thing was, of course, the summer of '79. That's when it started, and she paralleled it with her daughter, who also started then. And talked about the very early beginnings, being asked to even start a company, how they started, the bringing in of Carl, the simple group that they were at first, and then how the organization kept growing, but that the theme of starting with the patient at the center has been her driving force the entire career. Now, like you and I would do if we were giving our own biography or own history, we tell our story in a way that we want our story heard. And so I think, she doesn't mess with the facts of the history, but it's Judy telling the story of Epic, and Epic's her baby. So you take that into account and enjoy the ride. Yeah, and she is I'll give her credit. She's a really good storyteller. And I don't mean that like storytelling, like fiction story. I mean, like she is good. She's good at communicating the story, especially around Epic, which is something she's so passionate about, and it's so near and dear to her heart. Yeah, and one of the things I've noticed over the 6 years that I've been interacting, her comic timing continues to improve. So what you're saying is 6 years ago she would tell a joke and not realize it was a joke until everyone started laughing, and now a little bit that way, yeah, or try to tell a joke and the audience almost needed cue cards, but now she's got nice pauses and it's pretty fun. Yeah, well, last year she gave she gave us imagery of
when she goes to a conference, she feels like she's tied meat to either one of her legs, and that it's sort of like the dogs are all the dogs are all sitting around sniffing and when she goes to a conference, and I think we've all been there, have felt like, oh gosh, I don't want to go back into that conference hall because all those people are going to be there. And she sort of gave that imagery. I thought that was hysterical last year. They do and we're going to go back to that talk a little bit because she said some things that were pretty interesting. But they do the usual stuff where they really celebrate the things that people are doing with Epic. Yeah, give us an idea of what are some of the things that they celebrated. What are some of the things that people are doing with the Epic platform?
Yeah, so every year, of course, they celebrate those who achieved HIMSS level 7. And now, of course, in order to encourage people to stay up with their updates and to utilize their Epic resources to the maximum extent, they have the STAR program. So they celebrate the 9 and the single 10-star winners. And then the rest was some of the top 10s of accomplishments, my chart price estimates in this day of price transparency and requirements to be posting our charge masters, patients being able to go on their own and get an estimate for what a procedure would cost at our institution is a unique opportunity. One of the things that I liked, of course, was they celebrated Mona Hana Atisha and her use of Epic to discover the issue with the lead in the water in Flint, Michigan. And then I think the other one that was pretty solid was the work by our colleagues at Henry Ford and the ED triage protocol that identifies possible human trafficking victims. Obviously a huge and tragic issue in the United States still. And the fact that they have a protocol that helps to identify is something special.
I have no idea.
Yeah, that's really interesting. In fact, Judy at one point said, innovation is great, but first try to do imitation. And so, and when you think about that, there were the Henry Ford triage around human trafficking, the work around Flint, Michigan, the price estimates on my chart. There was just a whole bunch of really neat things highlighted. And I think sometimes we think about innovation and we have to go out and build a whole bunch of stuff. And we may not need to do that.
And that theme kind of continued through the meeting. I think, the maturation of the market, meaningful use for Robus, 2 EHRs, and now you have a lot of systems that have been on it long enough that some of the presentations are folks saying, okay, we got the tools, we now understand the tools, but let's actually use them. And so I think some of the work that's been done is pretty remarkable. The last session I went to was called In-Basket Work Queue, 8 physician advisors, 4 hospitals, 1 in-basket. And Mainline Health in Philadelphia is utilizing physician advisors for concurrent chart review and review of recent discharges for making sure that they have the appropriate documentation, the appropriate indications for inpatient versus observation stays. And it's not that any of this is rocket science, but it's just the physician leader of this was using the tools in a unique and more functional way. And so you can see the maturation occurring.
Yeah. So 10,000 people at this conference. And then I'm going to get into five questions that, my clients and guests are really we're asking prior to the meeting with you, things around quarterly updates, M&A activity, and those kind of things. But 10,000 people is this conference. If you had to stack it up against all the other conferences, is this really the one you have to go to if you're an Epic shop?
I think you have to have some people go to it. I would actually say as a CIO, probably not as much as once upon a time. I think, though, that your directors, you need them to go and see some of the new stuff that's going on, hear some of the innovative uses. But, for myself, there's other things like Scottsdale Institute, Chime, that I think would be better uses of the limited time that CIO has. But yeah, I put it up against anybody for the director to executive director level.
Yeah, I was looking at the fall schedule with regard to conferences and things that are going on, and it really is kind of crazy how many conferences there are this fall. All right, so let's get into the questions that people are interesting, have been talking about within the health IT space. So the first thing is the push to foundation and quarterly updates. I think everyone understands the reason for the push to foundation. I think the question people are asking is, how are we going to be able to do this, and how is Epic going to help us to do this? You want us to do it. How are we going to do it?
Yeah, and so it was interesting because talking to a number of folks, they're doing a update -1 approach. So they may be doing quarterly, but they're not taking the one that's the current release. They're taking the one just prior, letting somebody else have any of the snafus or the little glitches. With the quarterly updates, of course, glitches are not as numerous simply because the volume of enhancements and changes are not quite as large as when we took those every 18-month updates. But I think that's one approach that some are taking. I think others have found out that governance was not just for their implementation. They need governance to continue to support alignment of resources and kind of a bend but not break governance structure. We know that you got to have some flexibility to adjust, but you really have to stick to your guns. You can't get off of the foundation too far, because maintaining current currency with Epic and doing your upgrades gets so much more difficult if you customize too much. And then the other is, I think teams are starting to learn to have the flexibility to combine their application teams to better fit the updates and the enhancements that are coming. So you're seeing more streamlined work efforts by a lot of the systems that have recognized that you can't just leave somebody in Cadence and somebody else in Resolute. You've got to sometimes have work groups that combine those folks and the clinical folks.
Yeah. People are generally, from an IT perspective, you sit back and you have a conversation around the complexity of a system. And if it is this complex, it's hard to maintain those systems, and the cost just goes up, and the reliability of the system goes down as you increase the complexity. So the push to foundation, almost everybody in IT understands. They're just really struggling with, okay, how am I going to start taking quarterly updates? Some of these people were taking, annual updates, or even or even longer than that if they could get by with it. And some of them are looking at their distance from where they're at to foundation is pretty significant, and represents an awful lot of work around customizing the product around their workflows and their solutions. That it is going to be it's going to be a heavy lift for some organizations.
Yeah, I think the Geisinger example, phenomenal, wonderful system, but they had customized tremendously, and they made a decision to go back to foundation, and there was a lot of disgruntlement to be managed, a lot of distress. A lot of folks were having their cheese moved. They lost their personalized order sets, etc. But once they got through it, you're starting to see them come out on the other end with some improved results in their pop health, which they already were good at, but improved results there, and some improvements in their ability to track quality measures for the outcomes-based reimbursement models that they're involved in. So I think, Geisinger for me is a good example of why you have to do it and how you can do it. And yeah, it's going to hurt like crazy while you do it.
But you just do it. Well, and if you have the money to do it, I guess, because it does take take some energy to do it. Let's talk about M&A. So some of the organizations I've been talking to are, in the throes of M&A. So there's two aspects of that. One is if you are in the acquisition mode, you take a health system like Jefferson that just agreed to pick up the children's hospital, plus they have other acquisitions going on around there. They're an Epic shop, and you have similar Epic shops that they're acquiring. But still, maybe not their case, but in a lot of these cases, you're looking at 12 to 18 month integrations of these various health systems into a single build and a standard set of workflows. And you start stacking those up, you end up with an awful lot of work back to back to back around, even an Epic to Epic migration. So, I know that Epic talked about this.
Maybe some more work.
Yeah, well, in fact, it's interesting because it's almost in some cases, it's a new build, which is amazing.
Well, and one of the things that Providence St. Joseph is pointing out is the expectation of data conversion is so much higher on an Epic to Epic. But if you've got two different instances of Epic, that transfer of data is still complex, but you cannot skimp on it. And you can't skip the standard install steps just because it's Epic to Epic. You've still got to follow the rule books. Otherwise, you get in a ton of trouble and you have huge disappointment for the group that's being brought onto the motherships or to whatever version of Epic you're bringing everyone onto. Epic's recognized this. They're providing some new tools. They've got a pre-work phase playbook, which is really looking at, how do you have to look at the acquisition before you even sign the papers? Look at the deficits in their IT shop, the opportunities in the IT shop, what's going to have to be replaced, how many computers or CPUs are you going to have to buy, et cetera, and have a realistic view before you get going. And Epic didn't provide that type of awareness. They did certainly if you were doing a brand new installation, but now they're doing it with these acquisitions. And the other is an operational playbook for merger acquisitions and consolidations. And then finally, a specific Epic to Epic conversion toolkit, recognizing that people thought it was going to be a little easier than it is. And the final thing that two systems talked about, and one in fact was in trouble because they were in violation of their own policy, but you've got to make sure that all of your policies are updated to be in coherence with whatever Epic build you're going to.
Interesting. So they are introducing a lot of things in that area of M&A, and we, as an industry, have been asking for this kind of help because there's just an awful lot of this work going on, and their involvement is going to be welcome, I would think, in this space.
Okay, I'm going to send you.
So one of the things that came up in Judy's, I'm trying to think. So I have the cost of running Epic. I have clinician usability and combating burnout. I have integrating additional data sources, genomics, social determinants of health, claims data, and I have interoperability. So of those four topics, which one would you like to start with?
Well, why don't we go to clinician usability and combating burnout? Because I think one of the areas that to me is totally remarkable is their partnership's probably too strong a word, but the collaboration with CLASS and the Arch Collaborative, the fact that Epic is working with CLASS, and I know, some people would say, well, that may decrease some of CLASS's credibility, but I don't think it does. I think it's just a recognition on their part that such a large percentage of the health systems and the physician world are on Epic that they ought to pay attention. But that Arch Collaborative is looking at how are physicians using it, who's proficient, does proficiency really translate to satisfaction, and does satisfaction translate to not burned out? And they're finding some interesting data that I think they're going to be reporting soon, but it's kind of a conundrum because sometimes the most proficient physicians are the busiest physicians, and we know the busiest physicians tend to be the burned out physicians. So they're finding some areas for deeper dives to find out, is this really cause and effect? One of our friends from Mayo appropriately brought up, just because you're seeing something, it's like any other research. You can't claim cause and effect until you look deeper. But I think that's a really neat area and a big step forward that Epic's recognized they've got to deal with clinician burnout, not just physicians, but APRNs, nursing. They've got to figure out how to help support these folks, and collaborating with CLASS is a start.
Yeah, and their general approach is, I mean, they're a very prescriptive organization, which we've talked about before. And so they do have some pull. They will be able to go in there and say, "Hey, let's talk about these notes. Let's talk about these workflows." And they'll, unlike, even unlike a CIO potentially trying to bring some of this stuff up and address it within the health system, Epic has clout. They're able to do things on a scale that and get things started at a scale that even some CIOs can't. So it's definitely
Oh yeah, yeah. It is overwhelming, and when one of Judy's presentation points that fits in here is that with Caboodle and with the artificial intelligence programs, they now have 8 million patient records from the early adopters already in Caboodle and feeding the AI evaluation. But that number goes up to 230 million when you get the majority of the Epic systems utilizing it. If they really get to that, that's an amazing database.
Yeah, it is. And so was that the Cosmos stuff
That's
she was talking
Cosmos,
about?
and yep, Cosmos is kicking up from Caboodle to Cosmos for the AI. Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to have somebody run me
Caboodle,
through. So
Cogito is the data warehouse. Caboodle is an Epic Supply product that visualizes and utilizes some of this data, providing some reporting. And then Cosmos takes all of this plus other things that you can import in the future. It's not all importable at the moment, but the idea is that then Cosmos takes all that and can apply AI to this data and come out with new insights. And again, 230 million records, you start to have some amazing capacity for developing new insights.
Yeah, one of the ones I do want to make sure we hit on this show is the cost of running Epic. So the question becomes, how do we maximize the use of Epic and reduce the overall percentage of the budget that Epic is taking up right now? I know that some CIOs have given me some significant percentages that they say, look, before I start the month, better than half of my IT budget is going to running this one system. And that's okay, except they have another 180 to run, as well as new projects and other things that are going on. So did Epic address that at all? Did they? I know they've tried things in the past.
I think Carl did a reasonable job of addressing it in his presentation, in that he was talking about the fact that Epic has continued to grow the number of modules and functionality and the variety of things that it can address, and systems have to be aware that if they're going to be on Epic, they're paying for that, and they're paying for that kind of upkeep. But if they have other products that are duplicative, or products that they've not used, but they're still paying for standard maintenance, they need to start looking at archiving. And he didn't use the phrase, but one of my friends sitting at the table used the phrase, got to clean out the attic. There's a lot of stuff that's just sitting up there and costing money that you may be able to get rid of if you indeed adopt if Epic can do it, we're going to use it mentality. But you got to get your portfolio of applications trimmed. It's still going to be expensive for a smaller system, particularly. It represents a big chunk of your budget.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm working on an archive project, consulting project right now for somebody. And as I'm doing the research, what I'm finding is a bunch of health systems, instead of investing in an archive solution, which is a fraction of the cost, they keep EMRs running for multiple years. I mean, you can go back and go, and it's like, what's this McKesson system? Well, that's our old EHR. Well, how long's that been running? It's like, well, I don't know. It's been running for this. Are you still paying licenses? Yes, we're still paying licenses. I'm like, and at a fraction of the cost, and you just multiply that out. There's like 50 of those, and you drop in an archive solution and just do the work, and you can shut those things off. And that's, I guess, one of the things they're saying is, and this is Darren Dworkin's quote, which I think you told me he said at the Epic meeting, but he says it to anyone who will hear it, which is, they're an Epic shop, and if you're going to come and knock on his door and try to sell him something, just know that if Epic does it, that's what he's going to do. And that's, especially for small health systems, that's probably the right way to go. Absolutely the right way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and I heard the argument, and I agree with the argument that some things that Epic is doing, they're not doing optimally or as well as some of the third-party softwares out there. But the one thing you can trust is the Epic community will get them doing it better, and Epic iterates as fast as any of the EHRs can. They just have this amazing, large group of talented people.
Yeah, and that sort of gets to the Epic view of the world is Epic can do it all for the health system. I mean, they wouldn't say it all,
Yeah.
but they would say the things they do well, and you should rely on us to do those things.
Yeah.
But
4 years ago, I heard Judy say, if we can't do it well, we don't do it. And there are some things that at that time she said there are some things I simply don't do. They're doing more and more, but yeah, their goal is to do them excellently. And we can take any one of the current EHRs, and particularly my physician colleagues, we can just tear them up to pieces because they're not where we want them to be. But no one's getting there any faster than Epic, and there's other good systems. I think Meditech and Cerner are making some progress, but Epic's definitely got to be contended with.
So the overall cost of this stuff is just going to drive a stake in best of breed. Best of breed is going to become one of those things that you just can't afford to do. It's
going to be harder and harder.
Harder and harder. So
I think there's CorePoint and things like that where they have their niche and that provide that interoperability component. I think those are the products that are going to thrive. But anyone who goes directly at a module in Epic is going to have a hard time.
So one of the hot topics on Twitter around the conference was Judy's comments on information blocking and the and APIs and the stuff that you're getting out of ONC, and it's really falling into two camps. It's falling into one camp, which is to say, hey, we're gonna have a privacy thing here, so we've got to protect the patients. We're gonna have a privacy thing, and then you have really, I'd say what it feels to me is like the innovation community is saying, that's a really convenient place to be, to say, hey, trust Epic. We're going to control the flow of information, and you have to pay us to get the information and whatnot. And so again, I didn't go to the conference, so I didn't hear the quotes directly, but if you look at it on Twitter, you're seeing some pretty interesting responses to it. No one doubts, because Epic has done a phenomenal job with their sharing platform and amassing those records, making them available for research and other things. But you have this innovation community over here that's saying, hey, let me take a crack at some of this stuff. Just make this stuff available via APIs. Can you give us an idea of what are some of the things you said, and put it in context so people will understand where she was coming from?
Yeah, so I think we have to start with the fact that we know Judy's always had a vision, and it's a remarkable vision, and look at where it's brought her since '79. That being said, that vision is patient at the center, but Epic surrounding the patient more and more and more and more layers until Epic is the galaxy of care for the patient, and Epic is everywhere. That's her vision. That's going to mean that she's going to protect it very much and not appreciate external intrusion. So when you hear the narrative and you take the quotes in context, you recognize that it really is just Judy being herself, just making sure that she helps us to understand that she's got a vision for Epic, helping everybody. But,
yeah, she's protecting the patient.
She's protecting the patient, and that's her heart for it. But it comes across as she's blocking other people or fending off other people. And more concerning is maybe the fact that she's putting herself in opposition to the government, and that's a difficult position to put yourself in. And maybe there's a better way than being quite as oppositional, and maybe it's getting in the room and helping to develop the path forward for everybody participating in that. And, I don't know if that's going to be a possibility, but I think, in the world I live in, and that I live in the AMA and other organized medicine, we've got to be in the room. And I know the AMA's gotten pilloried for staying at the table in 2009, but, better to be in the room and continue to stay in the discussions, in my mind, than to try to oppose, the irresistible force.
Yeah, there's a couple things that, I would say to her advisors, and that is, look back at history and see the people that have stood up to the federal government and how they have fared, is the first thing I would say before you're really exercising duty to get, the entire force of not only Epic, but the Epic community to wage war with the federal government. The second thing is understand, I hope, and I think she does understand that she's putting her clients in an interesting position, because yes, they're Epic clients and they appreciate everything that Epic does for their communities and for them, but ONC is their largest payer. I can't think of a health system where the ONC isn't their largest payer. So you have to be careful not to put people in between a rock and a hard place. And the other thing is, I would say, Epic has such a great opportunity to lead here. It is just outstanding that they could go into the room, and if they could see eye to eye with Secretary Azar and Seema Verma and the rest, those conversations would be really interesting. I think we could. I know that in Judy's world, they are moving healthcare forward, and they are moving healthcare forward. But I think there's still so much more opportunity, and the reality is, the more people you involve, the more people you can, the more smart people that you allow to try to solve a problem, you're gonna end up with more solutions, more opportunities for solutions. That's more commentary than anything.
Yeah, but I think the other thing is, people on the other side of the issue there's a risk in distracting them from the amazing things that are going on. The MyChart bedside on the phone, because again, back to the consumer centricity. Getting that amount of information and the elegance of the information that can now be presented to the patient at the bedside. Family can track who's been at the bedside. The MyChart Care Companion coming out, that's going to help patients with reminders for the medications. And I know that's competing against somebody else's product, because there's other products that you can get, apps that you can get. But this is integrated with the health record that the patient's dependent on. So patient-initiated care everywhere. In 2020, all those things are coming out. Happy Together for non-Epic EHRs, which is a bit of an interoperability step forward. People will get distracted if they see the opposition and they stop looking. And I think that's something that I would advise anyone who's a supporter of the Epic product to say, hey, we want to make sure that people know this is going on. This is good for patients. This is good for communication with other clinicians. Let's not lose that by, again, taking on the irresistible force.
Right. And I hope we did that on this show. I hope we highlighted, enough of the good things that came out of the conference, that people don't get, fixated on this one thing. People like to get fixated on the one thing, but there's a lot of exciting and positive things coming out of the conference.
To me, the key takeaway of the conference, if anyone's going to hear one thing, is that there's a maturation in the systems on Epic to where they are now starting to move forward with real patient care initiatives and real clinician care initiatives that we just didn't have a chance to get our head up and do when we were busy putting in the EHRs and meeting the arcane measures of meaningful use. There is now real movement that I think is going to help us to move to a value-based and quality outcomes oriented system. And that's what people ought to take away. I think this was that tipping point in the user group meeting to where you're starting to see some real progress in areas that, at least to me as a physician and me as a patient, matter.
I want to thank David for taking the time before he gets on the plane and heads back from Madison to spend a few minutes with us to fill us in on the UGM conference this year. It's always great to have him on the show, and I really appreciate him taking the time. Please come back every Friday for more great interviews with influencers, and don't forget every Tuesday we take a look at the news, which is impacting health IT. This show is a production of This Week in Health IT. For more great content, you can check out the website at thisweekhealth.com. You can check out the YouTube channel, thisweekhealth.com. At the top, at the menu, you can click on the YouTube link to get to the YouTube channel. Keep the feedback coming. Bill at thisweekinhealthit.com. Good, bad, or indifferent, it all helps to make the show better and to make it more relevant for you. Thanks for listening. That's all for now.